This is the new 2024 Ford Mustang. It's not often that a new Mustang comes around, but this one is totally new, completely redesigned compared to the outgoing model with new engines and a lot of other changes. And today, I'm going to take you on a thorough tour of it and show you all the quirks and features. Before I get started, be sure to check out Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website for cool cars from the modern era with free listings. You can list your cool car for free and auction it on Cars and Bids. And we've had some great sales recently, including this wonderful Lotus Evora GT sold for $95,000, this fantastic Audi RS5 sold for over $55,000, and this wonderful Toyota Century with a V12 sold for over $25,000. We love the weird stuff on Cars and Bids. If you're looking to buy or sell a cool enthusiast car from the modern era, the 1980s and up, Cars and Bids is the place to do it, with daily auctions and great selection at carsandbids.com. All right, time for the quirks and features of the new Mustang, and I'm going to start on the outside with the exterior design. At first glance, a quick look at the new Mustang shows that it looks fairly similar to the outgoing model. That's especially true for the profile, the overall shape, which frankly has been relatively similar for Mustang models since about 2005. The designs have generally been more evolutionary than revolutionary, and that is true on the all-new 2024 Mustang as well. Now, if you ask Ford, they'll tell you that the big difference between this new Mustang and prior models is it's more chiseled. It has more sharper edges and creases, which give it a more modern look. And that's especially true around back, where you can see there's now a sharp horizontal crease going across the entire width of the car around back, and it makes the entire rear bodywork point inward, which is different from before. And that inward point even includes the famous 3 vertical taillights on each side, which now have sort of an arrow shape or a chevron shape pointing inward with this sharp crease. Speaking of these taillights, worth pointing out that just like in previous Mustang models, they still blink in sequence, although as you can see, they blink a little bit faster than before, a little quicker their sequence blinking, but still an iconic Mustang design element that's been kept for this model. You can also see the front turn signals now also blink in sequence, which is an interesting design change that kind of ties it into the rear turn signal blinking. And one other thing I love about the front lighting is the way this car looks with just the running lights on. You have these very subtle running lights, 3 horizontal LED strips that look mean and aggressive and certainly not overdone. It is a very cool look for the running lights in the new Mustang. But anyway, back to exterior design, and in the back, Ford says the rear haunches have been widened in the new Mustang, and they certainly look very wide and give the car a muscular look. And once again, you have kind of a sharp crease going over the rear haunches, which is Ford's attempt to make the car edgier and bring it more into a modern look with design. One other interesting element, an Easter egg around back, is at the base of the rear window you can see silhouette outlines of all of the previous Mustang models going back to the original, and they've even included the Mustang 2. The controversial Mustang 2 is printed right there, its outline along with all of the other Mustangs, showing the evolution of this car to the present day version. One other interesting piece of exterior design with the new Mustang, Ford says they've intentionally sloped the roofline to make it easier to get in and out while you're wearing a helmet. So if you're going on the racetrack and wearing a helmet, the roofline is specifically designed to make it easier to climb in and out of the new Mustang. But with all that said, I must say that the overall design of the new Mustang certainly looks more evolutionary than revolutionary. It looks like the outgoing model, but changed here and there to make it a little bit more modern, a little bit more attractive, feel a little bit newer, but it's not at all a totally new clean sheet look like some people may have been expecting. Frankly, I was expecting exactly this. The Mustang's design changes have been pretty evolutionary for a long time now, and that's also true of its rivals, the Chevy Camaro and the Dodge Challenger. When they get updates, they're not massive, totally new looks. Neither automaker is really willing to rock the boat all that much with design change, so they kind of go with what works and just keep making tweaks and adjustments, and that certainly seems like what we have here. But anyway, next up, let's talk power. powertrains in the new Mustang, which are also very much an evolution rather than a revolution. I say that because the current Ford Mustang, the outgoing model, is offered with two powertrains, a 2.3-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder or a 5-liter V8. The brand new, fully redesigned 2024 Mustang will be offered with two completely new engines that are a 2.3-liter EcoBoost turbocharged 4-cylinder and a 5-liter V8. But Ford says they are completely new engines, presumably with a lot more power than the outgoing model, and that's certainly true of the V8-powered Mustang GT, which is this car. Ford says the new 5-liter V8 in the Mustang GT is the most powerful Mustang GT of all time. Now, Ford hasn't quoted power figures yet, but the current model is around 450 horsepower, so we can presumably expect more from this upcoming one. I also cannot show you the powertrain just yet because it is not production ready the way it looks under the hood, but trust me, it's in there. Fortunately, we can take a listen to the powertrain and hear how the new V8 sounds in the new Mustang. Here is a startup and rev from the new Mustang GT. Now, maybe more interesting than the fact that there's still going to be a turbo 4-cylinder and a V8 in the Mustang is the fact that there isn't a hybrid or electric version of the new Mustang. At least not yet. Hasn't been announced, hasn't been discussed. There was some speculation that the next Mustang might go hybrid or electric, but that's not happening yet. Ford hasn't announced anything other than traditional internal combustion engine powertrains. Ford also says there will still be manual and automatic transmissions, 6-speed manual standard with a 10-speed automatic option, and rev matching is standard with the manual transmission, at least in V8 models, which will add an element of excitement to the driving experience. But anyway, next up we move inside the new Mustang, where there are bigger changes to this interior than what you see on the outside and frankly what you see under the hood. The interior is also completely redesigned for the new model. There are some big differences in here compared to the outgoing Mustang. Probably the most obvious is this interior is entirely dominated by screen. You can see one massive screen stretching basically from the driver's gauge cluster area all the way over to the center, and it's split into two different panels, a massive screen-filled Mustang interior in here. And you lose the famous dual hump design that previous Mustang models have had, with one on the driver's side and one on the passenger side. As you can see, take a look at the new Mustang interior, that's all gone, replaced entirely by screens, and frankly, a slightly more traditional car interior in here. So let's talk screens in the new Mustang interior, because they have some very interesting quirks and features to go through. And I'm going to start with the driver's gauge cluster screen, which Ford calls an immersive digital cockpit inspired by fighter jets. Really, it's just a large gauge cluster screen, although it is a fantastic one. Very crisp displays, looks very high quality and really well done, and it is quite configurable. You can change it in many different ways, one of which is colors. You can play around with exactly what color you want to be sort of the main theme of this gauge cluster screen, but more importantly, it can change depending on your drive mode, which is very cool. This is the normal drive mode, and so a fairly normal looking screen. But you go into the sport drive mode and the sport screen, and you can see it gets more exciting, more aggressive, more enticing. Better yet, you go into the track drive mode and take a look at the screen now. It almost looks like what you have in the new Ford GT supercar with this horizontal tachometer and everything that you might want on the track sort of first and foremost in this gauge cluster display. You also have an interesting option here, which is a calm gauge cluster screen that can kind of minimize other distractions and let you see only the important stuff like your speed and basically nothing else to make things a little calmer. However, my very favorite gauge cluster display in the new Mustang is a retro display that looks like the old Fox body Mustang. So this was the Mustang in the late 80s and early 90s, and if you select that option in the gauge cluster screen, it looks like that gauge cluster from that model, like an 80s, 90s gauge cluster just made digital. It really does a good job of replicating the old Fox body Mustang cluster. At night, it actually lights up with a green glow, just like old 80s and 90s Ford models did. Well, now they've replicated that retro feature into the Fox body gauge cluster too. Kind of an interesting retro throwback. But anyway, anyway, beyond the driver's gauge cluster, the other major screen component in here is the center screen, which is 13.2 inches, Ford says, and angled towards the driver, giving you a little bit more of a driver-centric feel. Now, this runs Ford's latest Sync infotainment system, Sync 4, and it's compatible with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and frankly, Sync works really well. You tap it, it's tremendously responsive, very easy, very intuitive, simple to use. You can have multiple things on the screen at once, which is nice, so like the map on one side, the radio on the other, meaning you don't have to switch screens to see those different items at once, and it's a pretty simple, easy, nice system, and I like how it works. Now, one potential drawback of this system is that it integrates the climate control functions into the screen. However, it's worth pointing out that it's all pretty easy to use. Those functions stay pinned in the exact same spot no matter where you are on the screen, and then you can easily just make your climate control adjustments, heated seats, cooled seats, temperature, all that stuff at the base of the screen. No physical buttons, maybe makes it a little harder, but not really a big deal. But anyway, another interesting item worth pointing out in the center screen, the auxiliary gauges, which show a lot more information than just your standard gauges in your driver gauge cluster screen. And you can see there are several different views here, different labeling of the gauges, or you can add even more gauges if you want to see even more things, all right here on the center screen, and again, angled at the driver for easy monitoring while you're behind the wheel. Now, you can also adjust the exhaust note in this screen, and there are several different options. You have quiet, normal, sport, and performance, all different exhaust modes, and all configurable from in this screen. And speaking of the exhaust modes, one other cool feature in this center screen, you can turn on something Ford calls quiet start mode. You have this on, and when you start up the car, it will be quiet, and that way you don't wake up your neighbors and your community when you're starting up your Mustang. Then once you've backed out of your driveway and you're out on the open road, you can turn the exhaust louder to make it more exciting and fun. It's a cool idea. Next up, also configurable in this center screen, is a new feature that Ford calls an electronic drift brake. The idea here is it's a drifting specific brake that will enhance your drifting prowess in case that's how you want to use your Mustang. Do a little drifting, you can turn that on, and then it will enhance your drifting capabilities. And by the way, speaking of kind of interesting new features like that in the new Mustang, there is now a new feature that's available called Remote Rev, which allows you to rev the engine from the key fob, which I suspect will be met with either eye rolls or a lot of excitement depending on exactly who you are. But a new Remote Rev feature will let you rev the engine from the key fob, which I have to admit is kind of a cool idea when you consider who's buying these cars and what they're looking for. But anyway, next up, moving on from the screens and the new tech, some other interesting items in this interior. For one thing, a flat bottom steering wheel. You can see it here, and Ford said it is new and it is now standard on all Mustang models. You have this flat bottom wheel, which looks more sporty and performance-y. Ford also says new Mustang models will be offered with overhead USB ports that make it easier to plug in like a dash cam or a camera for recording your racetrack laps, so you don't have to have like wires all running throughout the interior. This car doesn't have it, but that's a cool idea, adding USB ports up there for cameras and other devices. And next up, another nice touch in the new Mustang interior. You can see this particular example is equipped with the manual transmission, which looks old school and fun and cool, just like you'd want from a Mustang. Same deal with the parking brake. No electronic parking brake here. You have this old school looking handle that you can lift up for drifting or sliding the car around, and that's frankly what you want from a Mustang. However, despite those old school touches, it's worth pointing out that the new Mustang interior has been upgraded with better materials than before. A lot of nice contrast stitching, nice trim, just some general upgrades. One other nice example is the seat belts. You can see this nice color matched line of trim going through the seat belt. Just gives it sort of a more luxurious, more upscale look. Now in back, you still have back seats just like prior Mustang models, and they are still tremendously small, just like prior Mustang models, but they are there in case you want to stuff a small child back there for a short period of time. That's pretty much all you could possibly do. Now, speaking of the seats, you will notice that this particular Mustang has Recaro seats, which look very cool. Heavily bolstered, you have holes in the top for racing seat belts to go through. It's a very high quality track focused seat, and that is part of the Mustang Performance Package, which is offered as an option on these cars. Both the 4-cylinder and the V8 offer the Performance Package, and it comes with quite a few upgrades, like, for example, wider rear wheels and tires. As you can see here, these are the Performance Package rear wheels and tires. It also also comes with a limited slip differential, a front tower brace, and Brembo brakes, upgraded brakes front and rear. And here's one cool Easter egg. The Brembo brake has a little pony logo on it, the Mustang logo, in addition to the traditional Brembo logo on the caliper, which is cool to see. Now, because this particular Mustang is a V8 powered GT model, its performance package adds a little more than what you'd get in the 4-cylinder. The performance package GT also adds brake ducts for additional brake cooling and an extra engine oil cooler for additional engine cooling if you want to use it on the racetrack. Now, if you get the performance package in the new Mustang, you also unlock a few options that you can't get in a standard Mustang. For example, Magna Ride suspension, which is a very cool feature, and I'm excited to test it out in this car. Also, these seats, which are not standard with the performance package, but available only with the performance package, and a performance exhaust, which once again, not standard with the performance package, but only available if you choose to get it. On Mustang GT models equipped with the performance package, you also get the word performance printed very small on the GT badge in back. You can see it here, a little Easter egg in case you're still not sure if you're looking at a performance package car. Take a look at the badging and then you'll know. And speaking of GT specific exterior items, it's worth pointing out that Ford says the GT model and the 4-cylinder model will have completely different front end designs. So you can easily distinguish a GT from a 4-cylinder just by looking at the front. The most obvious difference is on the hood, where the GT models will have this hood vent that you can see here, I guess for heat extraction. 4-cylinder Mustang models won't have that feature, and so that's a pretty big and very obvious difference. But there's more than just that. The GT also has just a more aggressive front grille with these vertical bars, as you can see. That's not going to be available on the 4-cylinder, and the lower grille portion is again larger, wider, more aggressive on the GT. Larger openings intended to be for better engine airflow, but also it just looks cooler, and so it's more fitting with the V8 powered GT. By the way, also worth pointing out, a new design feature for the new Mustang is something Ford is calling the Mustang Design Series, which is intended to provide kind of additional customization options from the factory. I guess Ford is getting in on this very lucrative customization trend. And they're kicking this off with something called the Bronze Design Series package, which will add some bronze accents on the outside of the car, specifically bronze wheels and bronze badges. They're going to offer this on both the GT and the 4-cylinder, and I suspect we will see some more Mustang Design Series customization packages coming throughout this car's life cycle. And so that's the new 2024 Ford Mustang. Unfortunately, I can't drive it just yet. The new Mustang has just been revealed to the world and it's not yet ready to get out on the road. But I look forward to getting behind the wheel in the next few months. For now, that was your most thorough tour yet of the new Mustang.